They were famous before they were formed. The industry printed their faces on magazine covers before they could vote, before they could sign their own contracts, before anyone around them had any obligation to protect what was being built and what was being used. In this video, we visit the graves of teen stars with heartbreaking endings. Aaliyah died August 25, 2001, age 22. Buried at Ferncliff Cemetery and Mausoleum, Hartsdale, New York. Rosewood Mausoleum, Unit 4, Private Alcove, Crypt 3. She was born Aaliyah Dana Houghton in Brooklyn and was performing on Star Search at age 10. Her uncle Barry Hankerson was her manager and also the head of the label that signed her at 14. At 15, her debut album, Age Ain't Nothing But a Number, sold over 1 million copies. The title was not, it turned out, ironic. She had been secretly married at 15 to R. Kelly, then 27. A marriage certificate filed in Cook County, Illinois, listed her age as 18. The marriage was annulled the following year. No criminal charges were ever filed against R. Kelly in connection with that marriage at the time it occurred. Aaliyah continued recording, rose to become the defining female R&B artist of her generation, and died at 22 when the charter plane carrying her and her team from a video shoot in the Bahamas crashed on takeoff. The aircraft was loaded several hundred pounds over its maximum weight. The pilot had cocaine and alcohol in his system. Multiple witnesses said Aaliyah had not wanted to board. She is interred in a private alcove at Ferncliff that costs what her first record contract was worth. The industry that married her off at 15 buried her at 22 and called her a legend without pausing for a single breath in between. Selena Quintanilla Perez died March 31, 1995, age 23. Buried at Seaside Memorial Park, Corpus Christi, Texas. She was performing in her family's band at age 9. By 15, she had won Female Vocalist of the Year at the Tejano Music Awards, a title she would win 9 consecutive times. She built a fashion line, 2 boutiques, and a recording career that crossed every commercial and cultural boundary the industry said Latino artists could not cross. And she did it without the English language mainstream until the very end. She was 23 and finishing the crossover album that was going to prove every assumption wrong. Yolanda Saldivar, the founder of Selena's own fan club and the manager of her boutiques, had been embezzling from those operations for months. On March 31, 1995, when Selena met Saldivar at a Days Inn motel in Corpus Christi, room 158, to collect financial documents, Saldivar shot her once in the back as she turned to leave. Selena ran to the lobby and collapsed. She was pronounced dead at 1:05 p.m. at Corpus Christi Medical Center. She was 23 years old. The crossover album, Dreaming of You, was released 4 months after her death and became the first album by a Latin artist to debut at number 1 on the Billboard 200. It sold 175,000 copies on its first day. She never heard it. Her grave at Seaside Memorial is enclosed in a black iron fence and visited by thousands of people every year who leave purple flowers because she liked purple. Ritchie Valens died February 3, 1959, age 17, buried at San Fernando Mission Cemetery, Mission Hills, California. Section C, Lot 248, Grave 3. He was born Richard Stephen Valenzuela in Pacoima, California, and signed with Delphi Records at 16 after a local promoter heard him at a party. He had been playing guitar since age 11, teaching himself by ear. Come On, Let's Go, in 1958. Donna reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 the same year. The B-side of Donna was La Bamba, a traditional Mexican folk song he electrified and recast in a rock and roll frame, and it charted simultaneously, making him the first Latino rock and roll star of the modern era. He had been a professional recording artist for 8 months total. On February 3, 1959, he was on the Winter Dance Party Tour with Buddy Holly and J.P. Richardson. He won a coin toss to secure his seat on the chartered Beechcraft Bonanza that Holly had arranged to skip the freezing tour bus. The plane went down in a cornfield 5 miles north of Mason City Airport, Iowa, in the dark. He was 17 years old. His headstone at San Fernando Mission Cemetery reads, Richie Valens 1941 to 1959, and shows a Fender guitar in relief. His mother, who outlived him by decades, is buried beside him. He recorded for 8 months. People have been listening for 67 years. Freddie Prinze died January 29, 1977, age 22. Buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, Hollywood Hills, California. He debuted on The Tonight Show at 19, and Johnny Carson told him he had to come back. He came back, and Carson put him on the couch next to his desk, which was not where you put an act you were merely promoting. He was Puerto Rican and Hungarian, and he spoke about both with a specificity and velocity that made audiences understand they were hearing something new. Chico and the Man premiered on NBC in September 1974 and was immediately one of the top 5 rated shows in America. He was 20 years old. He was also already dependent on quaaludes and cocaine and the apparatus of network television. The agents and handlers and network executives and late-night producers had no mechanism for addressing that in a 20-year-old generating $1 million per episode. On January 28, 1977, Freddie Prinze called his manager, his psychiatrist, and his estranged wife. He told several people he was frightened. On January 29, 1977, he shot himself in the head in his Los Angeles apartment with a .32 caliber pistol. He died the following day without regaining consciousness. He was 22 years old. His son, Freddie Prinze Jr., was 10 months old. The Tonight Show desk that had launched him played the clip of his first appearance after he died, and that was the ceremony. Frankie Lyman died February 27, 1968, age 25. Buried at St. Raymond's Cemetery, the Bronx, New York. He was 13 years old when Why Do Fools Fall in Love entered the Billboard pop charts in January 1956 and climbed to number 1. 13. His voice on that record, unbroken, a boy's soprano writing a doo-wop arrangement with perfect instinct, is still played on every oldies station that operates. The men who owned Gee Records and collected the publishing royalties on that song were Morris Levy and his associates, and the contract Frankie Lyman had signed at 13, with no competent legal representation and no guardian present who understood what was being signed, ensured that Lyman received almost nothing from those royalties for the rest of his life. His voice broke at puberty. His career as a solo artist stalled. He was drafted into the Army, served 2 years, returned to New York, and found the industry had no place for a former child star with no falsetto. He struggled with heroin addiction from his late teens onward. He died of a heroin overdose on February 27, 1968, on the bathroom floor of his grandmother's apartment in Harlem. He was 25 years old. Morris Levy continued collecting royalties from Why Do Fools Fall in Love for the next 20 years. In 1992, a federal court awarded Lyman's estate partial songwriting credit. Levy died in 1990, worth an estimated $75 million. Frankie Lyman is buried in the Bronx, the borough where he grew up singing. Brittany Murphy died December 20, 2009, age 32. Buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, Hollywood Hills, California. Bright Eternity section, map H63, lot 7402. She was 17 when she appeared in Clueless, and her performance as Ty Frazier, the girl who arrives not knowing how anything works and ends up knowing more than everyone, was so precise and alive that people who saw it at 15 still quote it at 40. She was 25 when 8 Mile opened, and she matched Eminem scene for scene without anyone needing to explain to her what that demanded. By 2007, she was working less. There were reports about her behavior on set, about her weight, about the influence of her husband Simon Monjack, a British screenwriter who had restructured the financial and social architecture of her life in ways that left her isolated from people who had known her before him. On December 20, 2009, she collapsed at her home at 1895 Rising Glen Road in Hollywood Hills and could not be revived. The cause of death was pneumonia, iron deficiency anemia, and multiple drug intoxication. She was 32. Simon Monjack was found dead in the same bedroom in the same house 5 months later, on May 23, 2010, of the same causes: acute pneumonia and severe anemia. 2 people, the same house, the same diagnosis. The Los Angeles coroner ruled both deaths natural. The house was later demolished. Brad Renfro died January 15, 2008, age 25. Buried at Greenwood Cemetery, Knoxville, Tennessee. He had never acted before the day Joel Schumacher spotted him in a Knoxville, Tennessee schoolyard for The Client in 1994. He was 10 years old. Schumacher cast him on sight and was right. By 15, he was opposite Robert Duvall in The Apostle and Ian McKellen in Apt Pupil. By 18, he was turning in one of the most unguarded performances in American independent cinema in Bully, a film that required him to be entirely unprotected in almost every frame, and he was. He was also, by his mid-teens, addicted to heroin, which the studios and producers who kept casting him were aware of and continued scheduling around rather than intervening in. He was arrested multiple times. He attended rehabilitation multiple times. On January 15, 2008, he was found dead of acute heroin intoxication in his apartment in the Koreatown neighborhood of Los Angeles. He was 25 years old. His body was flown home to Knoxville and buried in Greenwood Cemetery, the same Tennessee city where he had been standing in a schoolyard when a director decided he had something worth using. Corey Haim died March 10, 2010, age 38. Buried at Pardes Shalom Cemetery, Thornhill, Ontario, Canada. He was the defining teen idol of the 1980s, The Lost Boys in 1987, License to Drive in 1988, Dream a Little Dream in 1989. His face was on every teen magazine in print. He was 14 when studios first came calling, and 16 when he was the most sought-after young actor in Hollywood. He disclosed publicly, years before his death, that he had been sexually abused by an adult male in the entertainment industry when he was 14, while working on a film set. He gave this disclosure in a documentary. No investigation was opened at that time. He spent the following decades attempting to reclaim what had been taken from him in terms of career and health, including a reality television series with fellow former teen star Corey Feldman, in which both men discussed, carefully and with visible pain, what had happened to them as children in an industry with no mechanism to protect them. Corey Haim died of pneumonia on March 10, 2010, with drug toxicity as a contributing factor. He was 38 years old. The adult who abused him was never charged. Christina Grimmie died June 10, 2016, age 22. Buried at Forest Hill Cemetery, Medford, New Jersey. She built 3 million YouTube subscribers before she was old enough to rent a car, covering songs with a vocal range that professional producers described as once in a generation. She finished third on season 6 of The Voice in 2014 at age 19. She signed with Island Records. She was recording her debut album. She was 22 years old and in the first chapter of the career she had built, from a bedroom camera and a YouTube upload box. On June 10, 2016, after a concert at the Plaza Live in Orlando, Florida, she was at the merchandise table meeting fans and signing autographs. A man named Kevin James Loibel approached the table from the fan line and shot her twice in the head with 2 semi-automatic handguns he had driven from St. Petersburg to use. Her brother Marcus tackled Loibel and disarmed him. Loibel then shot himself. Christina Grimmie was rushed to the hospital and died shortly after midnight. She was 22 years old. No motive was ever established with certainty. She had been standing at a table, pen in hand, signing her name for people who had stood in line to meet her. Nick Adams died February 7, 1968, age 36. Buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, Glendale, California. He was one of the original 1950s teen idols, a close friend of both James Dean and Elvis Presley, the kind of young actor who embodied the era's hunger for male rebellion in denim jackets and white t-shirts. He starred in the television western The Rebel from 1959 to 1961 and won a Golden Globe for it. He was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for Twilight of Honor in 1964. By the mid-1960s, the roles had thinned. He took work in Japanese science fiction films, in pictures the trade press did not review. His marriage to actress Carol Nugent ended. His finances deteriorated into litigation. On February 7, 1968, his business manager found him dead at his home in Beverly Hills. The coroner ruled the cause of death paraldehyde toxicity, an overdose of sedatives. He was 36 years old. James Dean had been dead for 13 years. Elvis was still alive. Nick Adams was buried at Forest Lawn, and the era that had made him a household name had ended without a farewell. Judy Garland died June 22, 1969, age 47. Buried at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, Hollywood, California. She was born Frances Ethel Gumm in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, in 1922, and was performing on stage at 2.5 years old. MGM signed her at 13, and within months had begun administering amphetamines to keep her energy up on set, and barbiturates to bring her down enough to sleep. The studio called them pep pills and sleeping pills, and gave them to her as a matter of production management. She was 17 when The Wizard of Oz was released. She was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Actress at 37 for A Star is Born, and did not win. She performed at Carnegie Hall in 1961, and the recording sold 2 million copies and won 5 Grammy Awards. By 1968, her concert performances in London were being described by critics as uneven. On June 22, 1969, her fifth husband, Mickey Deans, found her on the bathroom floor of their Chelsea flat. She had died of an accidental overdose of barbiturates, the same medication MGM had built into her schedule at 13. She was 47. MGM held the rights to everything she ever made for them. They screened The Wizard of Oz on television every year for 30 years. They collected the fees. She collected nothing. Juice WRLD died December 8, 2019, age 21. Buried at Memorial Park Cemetery, Calumet Park, Illinois. His name was Jared Higgins. He was 17 years old when he signed his first record deal, and 19 when Lucid Dreams, built on a sample from Sting's Shape of My Heart, reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. By 20, he was the most streamed artist of 2019 on Spotify globally. He wrote entire songs in real time, freestyle, from concept to finished vocal in one take, and the engineers and producers who worked with him said they had never seen anything like it. He was 21. On December 8, 2019, his private jet landed at Chicago Midway Airport at approximately 1 a.m. Federal agents were waiting with a warrant concerning firearms reported to be on the aircraft. As the agents began searching the plane, Juice WRLD swallowed multiple Percocet pills, witnesses reported, apparently to prevent discovery. He suffered a seizure on the tarmac. He was transported to Advocate Christ Medical Center and pronounced dead at 3:14 a.m. He was 21 years old. His label released 2 posthumous albums from material he had recorded before he died. The second went to number 1. Shannon Hoon died October 21, 1995, age 28. Buried at Dayton Cemetery, Lafayette, Indiana. He was the lead vocalist of Blind Melon, a band out of Los Angeles that broke nationally on the strength of No Rain in 1993, carried by a video featuring a small girl in a bumblebee costume searching for a field of people who danced the way she danced. The image became one of the defining visuals of the decade. His voice was enormous and difficult to categorize, spanning registers in a single line that most vocalists could not bridge in a career. He had a daughter, Nico Blue Hoon, born September 30, 1995. On October 21, 1995, 21 days after Nico was born, Blind Melon's tour bus was parked outside the Riverfront Music Auditorium in New Orleans. Shannon Hoon was found dead on the bus at 10 in the morning from a cocaine overdose. He was 28 years old. His daughter was 21 days old. He is buried in Lafayette, Indiana, the town he grew up in, and left to become someone the whole country would know. He got there. He did not get back. Paul Walker died November 30th, 2013, age 40. Buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, Hollywood Hills, California. He was in a cereal commercial at age 2 and guest starring on television by his early teens, and it was The Fast and the Furious in 2001, when he was 28, that locked his face into the awareness of a generation. He was known on every set he worked as the person who remembered every crew member's name, the grip, the craft services coordinator, the driver. Between films, he did disaster relief work in Haiti after the 2010 earthquake, and in the Philippines after Typhoon Hainan in 2013. He was 40 years old and in the middle of filming Furious 7 in Valencia, California. On November 30th, 2013, he was a passenger in a Porsche Carrera GT being driven by his financial advisor, Roger Rodas, on Hercules Street. The vehicle was traveling between 80 and 93 miles per hour in a 45-meter zone when it lost control, struck 2 trees and a lamppost, and caught fire. Walker was 40 years old. His daughter Meadow was 15. Furious 7 was completed, using digital effects and his brothers as on-camera stand-ins, and released as a tribute. The final scene used archival footage of Walker driving away on an open road. It grossed $1.5 billion. He had been in a commercial at age 2, and he drove away at 40, and the camera followed him until it couldn't anymore. Billie Holiday died July 17, 1959, age 44, buried at St. Raymond's Cemetery, the Bronx, New York. She was singing professionally in Harlem clubs at 15. By 17, she had recorded with Benny Goodman. By 25, she had recorded Strange Fruit, the most politically direct American song of the 20th century, a documentation of lynching set to a slow jazz arrangement, and Columbia Records refused to release it. She recorded it on a smaller label, Commodore, and it sold 10,000 copies in a week in 1939, and the radio stations would not play it. Harry Anslinger, head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, identified her personally as a target. His agents followed her, arranged informants in her entourage, and arrested her in 1947. She was convicted and sentenced to a year in a federal reformatory. The conviction stripped her of her New York City cabaret card, which by law prevented her from performing in any licensed New York venue for the rest of her life. She performed Carnegie Hall, she performed Newport, she toured Europe, she could not play a New York club. She died at 44 of cirrhosis of the liver at Metropolitan Hospital in Manhattan. A federal narcotics agent had been stationed outside her hospital room with orders to arrest her if she recovered sufficiently. She had 70 cents in her bank account and $750 in cash taped to her leg when she died. She had been under federal surveillance for 12 years. Hank Williams died January 1, 1953, age 29. Buried at Oakwood Annex Cemetery, Montgomery, Alabama. He was performing on radio in Montgomery at age 14. At 16, he had a regular radio show on WSFA. He signed with MGM Records at 24 and released Lovesick Blues in 1949, which reached #1 on the country charts and stayed there for 16 weeks. He was the most important figure in the development of country music as a commercial format, and he achieved that in 5 years, while his spine deteriorated from spina bifida occulta, a condition that caused him chronic and severe pain from childhood that no doctor had adequately treated. He used alcohol and morphine and chloral hydrate to manage pain that was real and constant and unaddressed by the medical establishment of the era. The Grand Ole Opry dismissed him in 1952 for missing performances due to his conditions. On New Year's Day 1953, he was found dead in the back seat of his Cadillac on a highway near Oak Hill, West Virginia, being driven by a hired driver to a performance in Canton, Ohio. He was 29 years old. He had died sometime in the night, probably of heart failure, alone in the back seat on a January highway. 20,000 people attended his funeral in Montgomery. He is buried in the city, where he had his first radio show at 14. Jimi Hendrix died September 18, 1970, age 27. Buried at Greenwood Memorial Park, Renton, Washington. He was playing guitar in bands in Seattle at 14. He served in the Army as a paratrooper at 18 and was discharged at 19, having faked a back injury because there were more urgent things to do. He was unknown in America and beginning to be known in England. And when he played the Monterey Pop Festival in June 1967, at age 24, the performance reframed what was possible on an electric guitar so completely that the musicians watching from the sides of the stage have been talking about it ever since. Purple Haze, Voodoo Child, The Wind Cries Mary, All Along the Watchtower. 3 studio albums in less than 3 years. He got sober in 1969, and the people who heard him in that final year said he was playing better than he ever had, more controlled, more deliberate, enormous. On the night of September 17, 1970, at the Samarkand Hotel in London's Notting Hill, he took 9 of his girlfriend Monica Dannemann's prescribed sleeping tablets. He was found unresponsive the following morning. He died at St. Mary Abbott's Hospital of asphyxiation, vomit inhaled during unconscious sleep. He was 27 years old. He left no will. His father, Al Hendrix, spent 25 years in litigation with the managers and labels who controlled Jimi's recordings, before a Washington state court ruled in the family's favor in 1995. Al Hendrix had to sue for 25 years to get back what his son made. Graham Parsons died September 19, 1973, age 26. Buried at Garden of Memories Cemetery, Metairie, Louisiana. He was born Cecil Ingram Connor III in Winter Haven, Florida, the son of a man who died of suicide when Graham was 12, and an heiress who drank herself to death on the day of his high school graduation. He reinvented American country music at 21 when he joined the International Submarine Band and released Safe at Home in 1968, the first album of what critics would eventually call country rock. He joined the Byrds at 22 and spent 8 months steering one of the most important rock bands in America toward pedal steel guitars and open plains harmonies. He formed the Flying Burrito Brothers at 23 and made an album, The Gilded Palace of Sin, that is now considered foundational to everything that followed. He introduced Emmylou Harris to the music. He died at 26 of a morphine and alcohol overdose at the Joshua Tree Inn in California's high desert, Room 8, on September 19, 1973. His body was stolen from Los Angeles International Airport by his road manager Phil Kaufman and a friend, who drove it back to Joshua Tree and partially burned it in the desert in what they claimed was a fulfillment of his wishes. There is debate about whether it was. What remained of his body was eventually recovered and buried in Metairie, Louisiana. The man who rebuilt country music for the rock generation was buried in pieces. Buddy Holly died February 3, 1959, age 22. Buried at City of Lubbock Cemetery, Lubbock, Texas. He was born Charles Hardin Holly in Lubbock, and was performing at talent shows at 12 and on local radio at 13. He opened for Elvis Presley at a Lubbock show in 1955 at age 18 and was signed to Decca Records on the strength of what the promoter saw. Decca cut him loose within a year. He signed with Coral Records in 1956, and That'll Be the Day reached number 1 in 1957. Peggy Sue. Oh Boy, Maybe Baby. He was 21. He co-wrote, co-produced, and played most of the instruments on his own records, a level of creative control that almost no recording artist of that era exercised. He was on the Winter Dance Party Tour in early 1959. On February 3, 1959, he chartered a Beechcraft Bonanza from Mason City Airport, Iowa, to escape the frozen tour bus for one night of warm sleep before the next show. The plane went down in a cornfield 5 miles north of the airport at 1 a.m. He was 22 years old. He died in the same Iowa field as Richie Valens and J.P. Richardson. His gravestone in Lubbock reads, "In loving memory of our own Buddy Holly," and the stone has a carved guitar. He had been making records for 2 years, Eddie Cochran died April 17, 1960, age 21. Buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, Cypress, California. He was from Albert Lea, Minnesota, and was playing guitar professionally in California at 16. At 19, he appeared in The Girl Can't Help It, performing 20 Flight Rock. And Paul McCartney later said that learning that song, note for note, was among the first serious guitar work he undertook. Summertime Blues, in 1958, reached number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100. Come On Everybody, in 1959. He was 21 years old, on tour in England in April 1960, in a taxi heading from a concert in Bristol to London's Heathrow Airport, when the vehicle blew a tire on the A4 road near Chippenham and struck a lamppost. Cochran was thrown from the car. He died the following day at Bath St. Martin's Hospital of head injuries. He was 21 years old. Gene Vincent, who was in the same taxi, survived with a worsened leg injury. Sharon Sheely, Cochran's girlfriend and co-writer, survived with a broken pelvis. Eddie Cochran died in a taxi in Wiltshire at 21 years old. He is buried in Cypress, California. Summertime Blues has been covered more than 200 times. These were children the world decided were ready for the stage and the contract and the schedule and the camera and the managers who knew exactly what they were worth and took a percentage of it. Ready for everything except the particular combination of industry and absence and ruin that was already assembling itself just outside the frame. The graves are what remain when the frame runs out. They are everywhere. They are not hard to find.